Way back in the spring of 1990, 10-year-old me was given a $5 allowance. In search of something to spend my money on, I came upon something fantastic at my local convenience store newsstand. It was then that I started a lifelong obsession with the gold standard of sequential art, the comic book. Now, as an old man, I have decided to open up some old boxes and dig into my comic book collection. I decided it's time for me to review and analyze the illustrations and artists that made me comics crazy. Hey folks, this is Chris Crazy House, and I'm back again for another episode of Comics Crazy. And today, we're going to be looking at Part 4 of the Revenge of the Sinister Six that takes place in Spider-Man 21. And let's take a look at the cover here for this issue. So, when we looked at the cover for issue 20, we saw the surprise of Spider-Man sporting two big-ass hand cannons, pointing them directly at your nugget. And we think that Spider-Man has just lost his mind and has become a vigilante in order to fight the Sinister Six. And in this one, we got Spider-Man back-to-back, lethal weapon style, here with Deathlok, and he's a cyborg. You're wondering, like, what in the hell is going on with this comic book here? But once again, very quintessential 90s. You always had to have, there are a lot of heroes out there with cyborg arms and cyborg parts and pouches, you know what I'm saying? So of course they had to get Spider-Man in on that, get him a little bit of that 90s swag going on here. And he's even got the little eyepiece and everything, right? So you're going to wonder what in the hell is going on with this comic book here. And we're going to peel it open and take a look inside to see why Spider-Man is looking like a bad imitation of the character Cable. Okay? So let's take a look at Spider-Man 21, Part 4 of the Revenge of the Sinister Six. So we open up the book here, and we're right here on the first splash page of this story. And we are faced with the character of Solo, pointing his gun directly at Spider-Man's nugget, getting ready to push his wig all the way back. And we're wondering what in the hell is going on. But if you remember from the last issue, we know that Mysterio put the whammy on Solo and made him believe that he had killed the entirety of the Sinister Six single-handedly, and that he is now about to kill Dr. Octopus. But what we, the audience, know is that it's Spider-Man that's about to get shot here. So, you know, Mysterio fed a little bit into Solo's ego, making him think he could kill that many villains at one time with just a couple of Uzis. But we know that it's not what's really going on here. It was just all an illusion. Right before Solo can pull the trigger, he himself gets blasted. And we're wondering who in the hell put the caps in Solo. He tries to, you know, kind of shake it off because he's wearing some Kevlar to deflect the bullets. But he swings around, tries to shoot one of his little Uzis, and that gets blown completely out of his hand. Once again, he ducks down again, doing the famous 90s hero roll. We used to always talk about that when we watched those bad action movies with the hero rolling on the ground and shooting a gun, or rolling on the ground and throwing a ninja star or something like that. But even that doesn't work. Solo tries to do that, but I guess the pouches were way too heavy for him to roll, and he winds up getting shot in the face. And we see that he's taking on lots of battle damage, but not enough to kill him. So he decides to teleport himself out of there. And we see a silhouette of someone coming to help Spider-Man. Now, automatically, we're thinking that it must be Deathlok. It must be Deathlok that has come to save Spider-Man from certain death, because he's on the cover, right? And he's the guest star in this issue. But nope, it is not Deathlok, despite all the misleading silhouettes and everything to make you think it is. It's the cyborg that Spider-Man was fighting in the very first part of this Revenge of the Sinister Six. So it's the cyborg that has come to save Spider-Man. And meanwhile, while that's going on in the dimensional facility in New Jersey, we see that the Sinister Six is going inside the dimensional portal because they're thinking they're going to go to this other dimension and get themselves some weaponry that they can use to take over the world. Code over here to Mary Jane waking up just out of the blue, and she's realized that Peter has not come to bed. You know, she's dressed in her sexy lingerie. So, of course, if Spider-Man was home, he'd be snuggled up next to her, but he's not there. And in doing so, we get some Mary Jane cheesecake of her walking around in her lingerie, looking sexy. And she's worried that not only that Peter's not there, but the fact that he's had a problem with her being in this movie because she's going to do some nude scenes in this Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but also that Peter's birthday is coming up and she hasn't done any planning for it whatsoever. So, cut from Mary Jane to this ultimate, gigantic, and crazy splash page of Spider-Man waking up as a cyborg. And even he's surprised by this. He's like, what in the hell is going on here? The fact that he's woken up with a cybernetic arm. And I do like this splash page. I think it does look very cool. It's very well drawn by Erik Larsen. It's just ridiculous. Like, the whole idea of it just looks very silly. And I think Spider-Man looks silly with a lot of this stuff. But it's not really, he doesn't have a cyborg arm. It's really a cybernetic cast. It just looks like a cyborg, you know. Looks like it has like bombs and grenades on it as well. Like in this, I don't know, this weird solar panel shoulder pad that he's got going on here. I don't know what's up with that. But this doesn't look like any type of cast you would think of. Like, you would think that they would make something a little bit more effective to not make him look like a 90s superhero. But I guess the scientists were into 90s comics as well. So that's why they built it like this. And this is the part of the issue where I just kind of cringe every time I look at it. Even when I reread this story, I'm just like, good God almighty, what kind of exposition dump is this? This is bad when you have to cram all your explanations for what's going on in your book into 2 pages like this. This is not a good thing, folks, in my opinion, okay? And I can understand you want to explain things to your audience. You want to tell your audience, you know, some of the science behind what's going on or some of the people that you're dealing with. But this type of exposition dump is rough. You know, when you got this many word balloons and this much text on these 2 pages, like, what is going on here? Does Erik Larsen think he's Alan Moore all of a sudden? Is he Neil Gaiman all of a sudden? Like, what is going on here? You shouldn't have this much dialogue going on crammed onto 2 pages like this. That's just my opinion. Okay, I know some people get very wordy with their comics. They want to wax the word and try to, you know, show how flowery and great their language is and their skills at vocabulary. But this is too much, in my opinion. Okay, and you know, I guess I'll do my best to explain it, but basically what they're telling Spider-Man is this laboratory is built by the government, and they're doing lots of different experimentation with cybernetics, and that cyborg that Spider-Man and Ghost Rider fought in the very first issue, he volunteered for this, and he just got his brains got a little scrambled up, and that's why he went on a rampage, basically. And, you know, Spider-Man has kind of accepted that these guys are going just nice, good old scientists. So, you know, he asks, where's the cafeteria so he can get something to eat? And, you know, they assure him that they protected his secret identity. They worked on his arm and gave him the eyepiece. They didn't look under his mask. They want their best to work with Spider-Man and the superheroes of the Marvel Universe without hurting anybody. In fact, They've even called S.H.I.E.L.D. in to take a look at Cyborg X. I think that's what he's called. So that helps Spider-Man be reassured that everything's okay, even though, in my opinion, S.H.I.E.L.D. is not a trustworthy organization. Just my humble opinion. I know they're supposed to be the good guys, but anytime you deal with any type of large government apparatus like that, it's not too good. But once again, don't ever do, if you want me to enjoy your comic, don't ever do an exposition dump like this. This is kind of clumsy. It's way too much, and you can kind of truncate your story a little bit better without going through all this. It's better to show rather than to tell, in my opinion. So now we're getting back to the rest of the story of Spider-Man swinging out there after he got himself a donut, and he's swinging out with his new cybernetic cast, and he runs into Deathlok. And once again, this is where I told you before, this is a different version of Deathlok, and even Spider-Man is confused about the version because he says he met another version of Deathlok in an alternate future. And this Deathlok has no idea what Spider-Man is talking about. And that's just a little bit of confusion there for you readers who are super persnickety about which version of comic book characters you're reading about. But that's what that is. And Deathlok shows up to talk to Spider-Man about, worrying that this cybernetic organization is the same type that worked on him. And he says that he'll help Spider-Man fight the Sinister Six if Spider-Man will come back and help him investigate this cybernetic company. And Spider-Man agrees. So they bust in using all of their, this is a pretty crazy looking splash page, like even for Eric Larson, like just the extremities of the pose going on here. I do like that this is kind of like an off-kilter panel. It's not, straight on. Spider-Man's arm is kind of coming out at you, kind of got to show off that cybernetic arm. And, you got Deathlok in the background there. And it even continues onto here where, Deathlok and Spider-Man are fighting off these cybernetic guards that they got in this facility. And, just adding some more extreme poses here with the action. I do appreciate that part of it. If you're going to do some action, why not have the characters in some extreme crazy poses as well? Before we continue with the action, I just wanted to take a little trip down memory lane and the early 90s and take a look at this ad for James Bond Jr. I don't know if anyone remembers that cartoon that used to come on. I think where I was living, it used to come on in the morning. So I would see it before I went to school in the morning when I was in middle school. So I used to watch James Bond Jr. And they're going full court press with this advertisement here because they're advertising the game for the Super Nintendo, and also they're advertising the books. So if you want to collect the book series, they got all the advertisements right here for you. And once again, like I said, I remember James Bond Jr. I remember my little brother. He actually had like the action figures. But, I was a little old for action figures at that point. But I still watched the cartoon. Even, it had a lot of knockoff characters from the James Bond films. And I think they said in the intro to the cartoon that James Bond was supposed to be his uncle. Which I don't know how he's James Bond Jr. if that's his uncle. But some weird things going on with the Bond family there. His parents got some explaining to do. But, I thought it was a decent enough cartoon and was always fun to watch. Anyway, let's get back to the story here. So Spider-Man and Deathlok go in there to destroy all of these drones. They even fight some of Dr. Octopus's old arms that he's kind of set up to fight on their own. And, they finish all this trash and all these characters, and Spider-Man remarks to Deathlok that, I know you said you're supposed to be a pacifist, but you went kind of buck wild there on those robots, which is true. And that's part of the struggle that Deathlok has. If you read his solo series, we see that he struggles with the idea that he has a violent streak, even though he's supposed to be a pacifist. Anyway, they decide that the only way to stop the Sinister Six is to go into the other dimension and find them and see where they're at. and they do so and basically see that the Sinister Six has committed genocide in the other dimension. So we got kind of a turn here for these characters because, yeah, most of them are petty criminals, but now it seems that they've gotten completely and utterly bloodthirsty. The fact that they would go to a complete different dimension and not only steal stuff, but would kill lots of different life forms is pretty harsh, even for the Sinister Six here. And both Spider-Man and Deathlok realize that this place is rigged to explode. Of course, I mean, that's what all bad guys do. They rig stuff to explode, even when they're just going out for a snack. And Spider-Man and Deathlok decide to get the hell out of there before the explosion happens. And we get the classic big Brackadoom explosion that Erik Larsen is famous for. We saw it in the last issue. We've seen it in other books of his. He loves making a little building here in the corner and making the explosion come all the way out just like that. And we see Spider-Man and Deathlok kind of floating through the explosion. Now, they figure that the Sinister Six are nowhere to be found, and Deathlok wants Spider-Man to help him investigate this cybernetics company, and Spider-Man agrees. So they head over to the labs and find that it is completely destroyed. So the Sinister Six have now gone on a complete killing spree. Not only have they killed a lot of beings in that other dimension where they stole their weaponry, but now they've gone to Care Labs and not only taken some of the weaponry and cybernetics there, but they've killed a lot of the scientists and soldiers that were already in the laboratory. And it's just complete and utter chaos. So once again, the Sinister Six have gotten completely bloodthirsty in this book. And Spider-Man and Deathlok jump in there to help to take down the Sinister Six and the robotic drones that they have as their allies. And as they're going in there, we see that the Sinister Six have gotten upgrades on all their powers from the other dimension. You know, Electro shoots Deathlok with his upgraded electro cannons that he has there. And Spider-Man, while he's swinging through, realizes that the Sinister Six have murdered Cyborg X. I mean, they've completely demolished him here. He's bleeding out of all his orifices, and there's barely anything left of him here. So it's gotten real bad here. This is not your typical old school Sinister Six that just believed in committing some crimes. They're on one now, okay? And killing is their business, and business is good. Now, in the fracas, an explosion goes off that causes Deathlok to fall into a shaft that's underneath the facility. And while that happens, the Sinister Six have a new ship now, and they beam themselves up to get out of there. And Spider-Man is just totally beaten up and sore and has been pushing himself for several days now, and he can barely stand while the Sinister Six escape. So he doesn't waste time trying to chase them. He just hits them with one of his spider tracers and feels like he'll find them later. And we come to the last page, our cliffhanger for this book, and we see that Spider-Man is so beat down, he decides to go home to get some rest, and he collapses in his bathroom. Like he was trying to just come through there nice and gracefully, and he winds up passing out on the floor, and Mary Jane runs into the bathroom and finds him in there, kind of like finding your buddy who's OD'd or your buddy who's too drunk to get up. I do recall there were times in my life where I picked up people who have gotten so drunk that they've been laying right next to the toilet just like that, okay? I won't get into the personals or who these people were, but I've done it before. I'm the guy that usually winds up saving people who get too drunk or too high that they can't even stand up on their 2 feet. Anyway, that is the end of this issue of part 4 of The Revenge of the Sinister Six, and we see Spider-Man is in a bad spot. This was a good issue, and I would call this a decent middle issue. That's basically what it was, because the action picks up considerably in part 5 and part 6. And the next part is where we get the very famous cover for this story of The Revenge of the Sinister Six that they put on the collected issue here. So this is where we're going to get that very famous cover, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But if you enjoyed this review of mine for the Revenge of the Sinister Six Part 4, go ahead and like this video. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you're here when I upload new Comics Crazy content. And also so you can check out some of the artwork that I've done on this channel, because I've done some fan art of the Sinister Six themselves. So you can go look at my fan art on my fan art freestyles, as well as other great character art and fun things that I've drawn on this channel. Some stuff for kids as well. Lots of great stuff on my YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe and check it all out. Anyway, folks, this is Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.